Welcome everyone to this really special webinar focusing on 3 of the USA's most diverse and exciting states. We hope that you're ready to take on a virtual road trip of a lifetime. I am here with my colleagues Katie and Bethan. I am Jenny. I am the UK rep for Utah Office of Tourism. Katie represents Arizona and Bethan represents Colorado. As the 3 states, we've put together 3 sample itineraries that actually take you on a great journey through all 3 states. They are theme focused, so we have scenic byways and highways, national parks and dark skies. We'll share all of these itineraries with you at the end of the presentation. If you guys book through an inbound tour operator or a receptive, all 3 of these itineraries are already available through America for You and Rocky Mountain Holiday Tours, and will be available with ATI. And if you're a travel agent, your tour operator partner will be able to purchase these for you on your behalf. So today we've chosen to take you through our scenic byways and highways itinerary. It's absolutely incredible, takes you through some absolutely amazing scenery. There'll be time for questions at the end, so have a think about what you might want to ask us. And listen very carefully as we go through, because we'll be running a quiz at the end to win a great goodie bag prize. So let's kick off in Utah. Your clients can either fly directly into Las Vegas in Nevada, which is just a couple of hours from the Utah border, or they can connect into St. George in Southwest Utah, a lovely small airport which welcomes you to the state. Our journey ends in Phoenix, Arizona, but of course a lot of clients will want to tailor make their own itinerary, so other options are flying into Salt Lake City in the north of Utah and potentially out of Phoenix, or you can do a circle of this tour in and out of Denver. So Utah's known for its mighty 5 national parks to the south. That's Arches, Bryce Canyon, Canyonlands, Capitol Reef and Zion National Parks, and they are all very, very different. In the north of Utah, we have the Rocky Mountains, and in between there are incredible state parks, national forests, and there's a great urban scene, some lovely small western towns, and loads of activities and adventure. And all of this is connected by lots of lovely scenic byways along the way. So let's begin our journey on the Zion Mount Carmel Scenic Byway in Southwest Utah. This brings clients from St. George into the Zion National Park area and out the other side. As you can see from this picture, it's incredibly dramatic and really gives you a taste of the adventure that's to come over this journey through 3 states. It'll take about 1 to 2 hours to drive this scenic byway. It really does depend on where you stop along the way and how long you spend in Zion National Park. For Zion National Park, we definitely suggest you spend a good couple of days in the area, and great overnight locations are either in the lodge in the park, in the gateway town of Springdale, or in East Zion. So Zion Mount Carmel Scenic Byway links you with the Zion Canyon Scenic Drive. That takes your clients into Zion National Park, and really the depths of those amazing towering cliffs that Zion is famous for. Between March and November, this scenic drive is only accessible via shuttle service, which begins in the little town of Springdale. Parking for your clients is available in Springdale or in one of the visitor centres for the national park, or clients can just leave their cars at their hotel in Springdale. That's the best option. The shuttle service is fully interpreted, so it'll tell you what you can see along the way, some of the hidden meanings behind the national park, what it means to the locals and the Native Americans. And these stops along the way lead you to lots of different walks and hikes within the national park. And these range for fully accessible boardwalk hikes to some extreme hiking like Angel's Landing, which is one of the most famous hikes in Zion National Park. It's not for the faint-hearted for sure, because it takes you up loads of hairpin bends to the very, very top of the canyons, where you overlook the park down into it. The views are absolutely breathtaking, some of the most amazing views I've ever seen. As you leave Zion National Park to the east, you'll actually join Historic Route 89, which leads onto Scenic Byway 12. Scenic Byway 12 is an all-American road, which means it's at the very, very top designation of scenic byways in the USA. It runs from just a few miles west of Bryce Canyon National Park all the way across to Capitol Reef National Park, which is more than 120 miles. It winds up and down through forest, over slick rock, loads of lovely hairpin bends, lots of fantastic viewpoints along the way that overlook Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument, and lots of options for overnights as you journey along the byway. Clients can either stay in Bryce Canyon National Park or Bryce Canyon City on the periphery of the park, or one of the small towns like Escalante or Boulder. They're really, really good options as well. So Bryce Canyon is probably the star of the show along this byway. It's a huge, huge amphitheatre of towering rock spires, which are called hoodoos. I definitely recommend that your clients spend a day here exploring the park or just taking in the views. They can walk along the edge of the amphitheatre or walk down in and amongst those hoodoos. A lot of people actually say it's their favourite out of Utah's 5 national parks. I'm not sure, but I do love it. To the top right or top left here is Kodachrome Basin State Park. This park has more than 60 stone spires or spikes within it. Just another example of Utah's dramatic scenery and how very different the scenery is as you change from area to area. It's about 45 minutes from Bryce Canyon National Park and not far off Scenic Byway 12. And it was actually named after the Kodak film by Nat Geographic Society. So for those of you that remember old film cameras, that's where it got the name from. There are also some other great stops along Scenic Byway 12. One of my favourites is a real great wooded walk in the Calf Creek Recreation Area, which takes you to Calf Creek Falls. It's a tumbling waterfall with a great pool at the bottom that you can actually have a dip in if it's a hot summer's day, really cool you down. And for those clients that actually want to add in an additional driving adventure, I really, really recommend that they head on to the Burr Trail, which is from the small town of Boulder in Utah. It's a scenic backway. It takes you across more slick rock, past sandstone, sand dunes, and also some more of those incredible towering cliffs as you head further into Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument. The first 18 miles or so of it are paved roads, so it's very easy to drive with a hire car. Also along this route, which is what I find quite surprising, is that there's some really highly acclaimed and award-winning restaurants, so really, really good stops for local flair food for lunch or an evening meal along the way. As I said earlier, Scenic Byway 12 leads you all the way to Capitol Reef National Park and the town of Torrey, which is a really good overnight location for Capitol Reef National Park. It's also an international dark sky community, so it's a really great spot for stargazing in the area. In Capitol Reef National Park, clients can drive along the Scenic Drive, which will take you to some of the main accessible locations within the park. And for those that hire cars that are 4-wheel drive or have a high clearance, I really recommend that they head into the Cathedral Valley of the park. It's actually a gravel road, but very, very easy to drive, very, very accessible. And it takes you into the depths of the national park, really through some of the most dramatic scenery, some towering cliffs, monolith rock structures, really, really fantastic sort of afternoon or morning's drive. Also in this area, really taking you on a step back in time, there are some very accessible petroglyph panels, and that gives your clients an insight into some of the ancient rock art and ancestral Puebloan community in the area. Leaving Capitol Reef National Park, you join Scenic Byway 24. Along the way, there's a great stop at Goblin Valley State Park, and I think this is the perfect location for a picnic lunch. You can sit on the edge of the park, look out at the view, and then afterwards you can wander in and among the little rock formations, which really do look like little goblins. Okay, the next overnight for this trip has to be Moab. We're right over in the east of Utah now, and it's the gateway to both Arches and Canyonlands National Park. It's got a really fantastic downtown area, and I think after St. George, it's the next biggest town that you're going to come across, and it really is still quite small. There's lots and lots of accommodation, great shopping, so it's really good for some of those Utah souvenirs, and some lovely restaurants, lots and lots of variety in the town. It's also a real activity and adventure hub. We call it the adventure capital of Utah. There's loads of outfitters in the town where you can book whitewater rafting trips, mountain biking, climbing, canyoneering, and some really fantastic off-road adventures in the surrounding area. So Arches National Park is just 10 minutes outside of Moab. There are more than 2,000 naturally formed arches throughout the park. The scenic drive takes you to all the major locations within it, including Balance Rock, the windows section, which is what this picture is, and my favorite, which is Delicate Arch. One of my favorite things to do in Arches National Park is to hike to Delicate Arch at sunrise. So you're climbing sort of like all over the rocks up to this incredible arch as the sun rises, and the views just open up around you. Absolutely amazing. Canyonlands National Park is about 40 minutes drive from Moab. This area has been carved by the Colorado and Green rivers. Outstanding views all the way across. It's often likened to the Grand Canyon in Arizona. Different people have different ideas. Some have one that's a favorite and others think the other is their favorite. The picture here is of Mesa Arch, which is a short walk from one of the car parks on the scenic drive in the Islands in the Sky area of the national park. And a great stop on the way to or from Canyonlands National Park is Dead Horse Point State Park. And for all your movie fans, this is where the final scenes of Thelma and Louise was filmed. So you are looking over 600 feet above the Colorado River. You can see it meandering below, and this is where Thelma and Louise drove off the cliff into oblivion, shall we say. Let's head north now on the Dinosaur Diamond Prehistoric Highway towards Vernal, which is kind of in the northeast corner of Utah. And that's our final night in Utah on this itinerary. This is where the landscape really begins to change as you go through sort of like more forested areas. So you've left the desert southwest area of Utah, and you go through sort of like pine forest, juniper, Douglas fir, and the highway is named after the sheer volume of dinosaur fossils and remains that have been found in the area. There are also some really, really cute small Uten towns that you can stop off along the way for lunch or coffee break or something along the lines. And one of my favorite here is in this picture, it's called Helper. It's in an old mining area and has really kind of like reinvented itself as this artsy small town with some great coffee shops and art galleries throughout. In the Vernal area, there's really a couple of must-see places. First up is Flaming Gorge National Recreation Area, which is just to the north. It's a large dammed reservoir, so lots of boating and fishing opportunities, but there's also this canyon, which is known as Red Canyon. Again, very, very dramatic scenery and views down into the Green River. And then also one of my favorite locations in Utah, because it is completely different to the south of Utah, is Dinosaur National Monument, which straddles the border with Colorado. Here you can visit the Dinosaur Quarry exhibit, which has what you call the Wall of Bones, which is this truly incredible sight that no photo can do justice. I've tried to share a picture here, but it just looks grey. But is this 25-meter long wall of dinosaur bones and fossils and skulls, and there's more than 1,500 along this wall. It's an absolutely fantastic location. And with that, I'm going to pass you over to Bethan, who's going to take you through Colorado.
Thanks so much, Jenny. Hi everyone, I'm Bethan and I work on behalf of the Colorado Tourism Office in the UK and Ireland. So thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for that intro, Jenny. Utah, it was on my bucket list, but it's gone even higher up my bucket list now after listening to that. So yeah, as Jenny said, I'm going to continue taking you on this road trip, leaving Utah and heading into Colorado, or Colorful Colorado, as we sometimes call it. And you'll see from the next slide, and my background actually, just why we call it Colorful Colorado. So before we continue on this scenic byway route, I wanted to introduce you to Colorado as a state. So Colorado is the highest state in the USA. It is home to 58 mountains over 14,000 feet, or we call them the 14ers. And it's home to 4 national parks, including the Rocky Mountain National Park and the Mesa Verde National Park. If you could just flip to the next slide.
Yeah, I've just got a screen share issue that I'm just trying to sort out for you guys.
No worries, no worries.
Sorry
I'll just
about
keep
that.
talking and we can use our
I'll sort it
imagination
out.
for what's about to come. No worries. So yeah, Colorado is home to 4 national parks, as I just said, including the Rocky Mountain National Park and the Mesa Verde National Park, and it enjoys 300 days of sunshine. It is an amazing road trip destination. It's home to 26 scenic and historic byways, 5 of which we'll be covering today. And you'll see on the next slide, there is a map, and I've circled some of the byways that we'll be covering today. And these byways are all on what we call the western slope of Colorado, which is anything that is in the region which is west of the Continental Divide. And Colorado is such a great road trip destination, that so much so that recently the Colorado Tourism Office have launched a new road trip microsite, which is home to video, itinerary tips, recommendations, photos. I'll make sure I share a link to that microsite after this webinar. And the landscapes of Colorado are an excellent complement to that of Arizona and Utah. And the combination of these 3 states makes for a phenomenal road trip. It ticks off so many of those quintessential experiences that people are looking for on road trips. It has national parks, lesser known national parks, amazing food, hot springs, historic sites, nature, outdoors. It's just, I'm so pleased we're doing this webinar today so we can inspire you to combine our states. So before we jump into the Western byways, I wanted to highlight our state capital quickly. It's just in the map there with the star around it. So Denver, the Mile High City. As Jenny mentioned, you can also start or end your road trip via Denver International Airport. And in normal times, we welcome multiple direct flights from the UK. So it's a great gateway option and a fantastic city to spend a few nights. It's got amazing alfresco dining, shopping, arts and culture, and it's a good place just to get used to the altitude, because it's high. The Rockies are very, very high, and some people aren't quite prepared for that. So Denver will get you get used to that altitude before you head up into the Rocky Mountains. But this particular route, if you could flick to the next slide, please, Jenny, and the next one after that. Thank you. This particular route, we jump straight in the northwest corner of Colorado, starting on part of the Dinosaur Diamond Scenic Byway, so picking off really where Jenny left off. So Jenny's covered the Dinosaur National Monument, and we're not actually on this byway for very long in Colorado. So I just wanted to show you a picture of it, just so you get an idea of the incredible scenery that continues into Colorado. And then move on to the tops of the Rockies Scenic Byway, because that is where you'll be hopping onto next. So this scenic byway is one of the highest in the USA, hence the name Top of the Rockies. The elevation of this byway never drops below 9,000 feet. And the scenery on all sides is unbelievable. You can drive it in a couple of hours, but there's so many historic former mining towns and viewpoints en route that you should really take the day and really enjoy this byway. It features incredible views of 2 of the greatest 14ers in Colorado. So that's Mount Elbert and Mount Massive, and it travels through the Continental Divide multiple times. So for those of you who might not know what the Continental Divide is, I didn't before I started working for Colorado. It's a point where the rainfall that falls on either side of this peak, if it falls on one side, it will end up in the Pacific, and if it falls on the other side, it will end up in the Atlantic. So you can see why they call Colorado the roof of America, and it's home to that great continental divide, which is super interesting to anyone who loves geography or just things like that. It's just, yeah, it's an incredible place to say that you've driven over, because you feel like you're on top of the world. So some top tips for this byway is that the Independence Pass, where the Continental Divide, the Independence Pass is closed for winter from early November, and the Independence Pass part of the byway, you can't drive an RV over it, so that's something to be aware of. And I'm going to quickly whiz you through some of the views en route from Dinosaur to Aspen along this byway. And so the first one is Glenwood Springs, which is the hot springs capital of the world. Definitely not one to be missed. And just as an FYI, this is actually where the new Rocky Mountaineer train journey will overnight when it starts this new USA route in August. We're very excited about that. You could even do an overnight here in Glenwood Springs to break up this drive. So next on the byway, we have the Independence Pass that I just mentioned. And this is actually a picture of me in a former FAM group just before it closed, actually, because the snow was coming in. But yeah, you can see just sort of views on this road. And then next we have ghost towns. So this one here is Independence Ghost Town, which is 16 miles east of Aspen. And these are great. We've got 1,500 across the state, and they're amazing for people who like Wild West history, families. And Jenny was talking about picnic spots, and I think these ghost towns are an amazing picnic spot. You can literally have lunch and feel like you're a cowboy in an old Western film site. So it's pretty cool. And next we've got Aspen. This is just one place you could overnight. You could also overnight in Snowmass. Aspen, most of you will know for its as a winter destination due to its world-class skiing, snowboarding, winter sports, but it's a real cultural mecca for art, music, fashion, and an amazing place to overnight, and definitely worth staying a couple of nights here to really use it as a base to explore the wider area. You've got Maroon Bells, which is actually behind me, and just amazing outdoor adventure opportunities, hiking, cycling, wildlife watching. So yeah, it's a brilliant Rocky Mountain base. And after your overnight in Aspen, we will actually pick up on the next scenic byway, which is the West Elk Loop. And this is home. This is one of my favorites. It's phenomenal. It's home to some of the most striking wilderness views and sights. The forest ranger once described it as this byway as the closest you can come to a wilderness experience in a car. So I think that's testament to the sort of roadside views, and it also traces along the long gone railroad tracks and old pathways of the state's earliest explorers. So it's a real historic scenic byway. And depending on the time of year, you're likely to see wildlife all along the byway, including elk, bighorn sheep, beaver, black bear, but always maintain a safe distance, please. Top tip, this byway is beautiful in the summer, but it's even more spectacular in the autumn, and the leaves go from green to rich reds, golden colors. It's just, if you like photography, it's unbelievable. So if you just flip to the next slide. Thank you, Jenny. Here's a picture of the scenic byway. So I'm going to take you through some of the views en route from Aspen to Ouray. So we have the Black Canyon of the Gunnison National Park. It's a huge canyon, the deepest in Colorado. It's the least visited of the national parks, but I don't really know why, because it's honestly one of the most amazing places I've ever been. It's like nature on steroids. If you like photography, you'll be here for hours. It's just every twist and turn of the canyon, it looks completely different. And if you're passing through at night, it's also great for stargazing. It's one of the designated night sky areas of Colorado. Also on this byway, we have Montrose, and this is a year-round hub for outdoor adventure. So, you know, you could overnight here as well. But if you're passing through, I wanted to highlight some of the museums. I'm a bit of a history buff, so I really enjoyed this part of Colorado because there's two amazing museums. There's the Museum of Mountain West, which is the bottom right, God, left and right, so bad, bottom right picture. And this has 25 historic buildings sort of lifted and put there to keep them safe, and 500,000 authentic artifacts, including Butch Cassidy's saddle and chat. And it's also home, Montrose is also home to the Ute Indian Museum, which is the top right there. And this has one of the most complete collections of Ute artifacts, Native American artifacts in the USA. And it's a fantastic site, truly just an amazing educational place, and yeah, thoroughly recommend. So finally, you'll continue on this byway and you'll arrive at Ouray for your overnight. And I've actually included another picture from my fam in front of a sign. We did more than pose with signs on this fam, I promise you. But this sign actually frames what Ouray is known for, which is that it's the Switzerland of America. And you can see from some of these pictures the dramatic landscape that it sort of gives it that nickname. And Ouray, like Glenwood Springs, is another hot springs mecca. Lots of the accommodation have their own mini hot springs just for the guests to enjoy, but there's also a public bath, which you can see in the middle picture there. Again, this is a great place to overnight just because of the outdoor adventure opportunities that are nearby. It's known around the world actually for ice climbing in particular. It's probably due to the steep sides of the mountains that surround the town, but it's a wonderful old mining town, so a real sense of history and nostalgia when you stay in Ouray. So after your overnight in Ouray, we head onto the San Juan Skyway, or $1 Million Highway. So this is often ranked as one of the best roads in the world to drive. It's home to, well, you'll drive through very historic mountain towns such as Durango, Silverton, Telluride, and of course Ouray. But it also has $1 million views, as the name inspires. And if you drive it in autumn, again, like many of these roads, it's even better. The colors are just off the chart. So my top tips for this road, this byway, is that it's truly breathtaking, but you should check road conditions in advance, particularly the stretch between Silverton and Ouray, depending on the snowfall, etc. And there's also areas with drop-offs, so drive slowly, please. And dress in layers, actually, because at higher elevations, even in the summer, the temperature can drop in the evenings. So after this byway, we gradually move on to the Trail of the Ancients National Scenic Byway, and it's sort of taking you sort of out of Colorado back into Arizona. And with that change of byway, you get a real change in landscape. So you move from very verdant alpine forest, Rocky Mountain landscapes, moving into the wind and water carved sandstone canyons and more red rock geography. So I'm going to take you through some of the views on this last segment of the road trip through Colorado. So you have here's a picture of the $1 Million Highway. You can see what I mean about the golden colors during the autumn. And then on the next slide, this will show you the change in scenery and the change in geography between this last leg of the Colorado road trip. And then on the next slide, thank you, Jenny, we move on to the towns I mentioned earlier. We have Durango and Silverton, former mining and gold rush towns. Also have great downtown shopping, eatery, and again, a real sense of gold rush mining nostalgia. clients who love, into history and train journeys. We also have lots of historic trains down in this southwestern corner of Colorado, most notably the Durango and Silverton narrow gauge railroad. It's really popular with UK and Irish travelers, so I'd recommend booking that in advance. And then finally, the last place of note, I could talk all day, but the last place I'm going to talk about is Mesa Verde National Park, which is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's known for some of the most, if not the most, well-preserved ancestral Puebloan cliff dwellings, most notably the Cliff Palace, which you can see a picture of here. And my top tip for this national park is, like all of them, you can go in on your own and explore on foot on your own, but the cliff dwellings themselves, many of them can only be viewed via a ranger and with a guided tour. So you can purchase your tickets for these ranger guided tours in advance, and I'd highly recommend that. But yeah, this sort of concludes the Colorado leg of this road trip. And I'm going to hand over to Katie, who will take you on through to Arizona.
We're just going to dip quickly into Monument Valley first, which is on the border of Utah and Arizona, on the Trail of the Ancients National Scenic Byway. So this is quite a recognized feature of Utah and Arizona. The sandstone monoliths tower 600 meters plus high. There's absolutely perfect light in the morning and the evening. Sunrise and sunset are the most incredible times to see the colors changing across those rocks, going from different depths of red and orange. It's actually on the Navajo Reservation, which is one of the largest Native American reservations in the USA. The best way to experience Monument Valley for sure is on one of the Jeep tours or horse riding tours with a Navajo guide. Those Jeep tours take you really up close to the monolith rock structures, and a Navajo guide gives you a real sense of what the area means to them as a Native American, and gives you a real insight into their history and heritage. It's also a really famous film backdrop to many blockbusters, all those famous westerns that you know of, but also the likes of Forrest Gump and Back to the Future. So as I said, this is straddling the border between Utah and Arizona, and Katie is going to take you through the rest of our journey.
Thank you so much, Jenny and Bethan. I'm sure you'll all agree it's been an amazing road trip so far. So yeah, Monument Valley leads us nicely on into Arizona. I think Jenny's kind of summed it up well. It's an absolute must-do when on this road trip. So in Arizona, along this kind of scenic road trip, next slide, please. We're going to pass through the Grand Canyon National Park, Tucson, Flagstaff, Sedona, Cottonwood, and then finally ending up back in Phoenix, where we will sadly be taking our trip home. So the first leg of the Arizona section, so we'll be leaving Monument Valley and traveling to the Grand Canyon National Park. You can see the route here. So we're taking Desert View Drive, continue on here and ending up at the Grand Canyon National Park East Rim, which is located in Tucson, Arizona. So it's a 180-mile route, which takes roughly around 3 hours, and your overnight options are at the Grand Canyon National Park or in Tucson, Arizona. So I'm sure everyone will be familiar with the Grand Canyon, but just a few things that you may not know that you could do and see here at this natural wonder of the world. So it is by far Arizona's most distinguished kind of landmark and popular tourist destination, stretching over 277 miles from end to end. And then its rocky walls kind of descend more than a mile down into the canyon's floor, where the wild Colorado River traces a swift course southwest. So in 2019, the Grand Canyon actually celebrated its 100th centennial of being a national park. So that was a big milestone as well. But yeah, we do say it should be on absolutely everybody's bucket list. Everyone should go there at least once in their lifetime. We've got a great first timers guide on our website, which we'll be sharing some extra resources at the end as well. So you'll have links to all of that as well. Helicopter tours are a really popular way of seeing it, which I'm sure you're aware of, but you can also see pictured here. Cycle, hike, horseback ride, jeep tours, and whitewater rafting is one that people aren't that familiar with, but yeah, incredible rapids here. If people are keen keen to do that. In terms of timings to go, so cooler weather, lighter crowds, and better lodging availability, we just recommend going in shoulder seasons, which tends to be May to March and kind of September to November. So on to the next leg. So this is now leg 10 in the Scenic Byways and Highways tour. So we'll be moving from the Grand Canyon National Park down into Flagstaff. So you can kind of see from this how close they are in proximity, and a lot of people will tend to do an overnight in Flagstaff and then visit the Grand Canyon as well. But again, amazing views on the way, various options to stop off at. But yeah, the place here we're going to end up at is Flagstaff. So next slide, please. So this is where you'll be staying the night. And there's a few things that absolutely must check out here. So pictured on the right, you've got Lowell Observatory. So Flagstaff was actually nominated the first international dark sky city back in 2001. And this is kind of due to its low light population and its commitment to enforcing stargazing friendly restrictions. So it's an ideal destination to explore the night skies. You can either do this with the naked eye, you can actually walk at your hotel and have amazing stargazing opportunities, or you can kind of dive in further at the Lowell Observatory. They've recently added an outside viewing deck there as well, so really unique experience. But also in Flagstaff, it's also famous for being on Route 66 and for its snowy winters as well. So yeah, you can actually ski in Flagstaff, which I think a lot of people aren't aware of as well. It's also nestled in the world's largest ponderosa pine forest. So on the bottom left picture there, you can see the National Monument pictured. Next slide, please. And then leg 11, so we're moving down from Flagstaff to Sedona, and we'll be also visiting the village of Oak Creek Canyon. So you can see here pictured, this is the road that you'll be taking. So even though it's an hour long, it will absolutely fly by because you'll just be mesmerized by all these incredible views along the highways. Next slide, please. So we'll be starting in the village of Oak Creek Canyon. So unsurprisingly, it's home to Oak Creek. So Oak Creek is a gorge along the Oak Creek Fault. So kind of tectonic forces have shifted the land together, and the subsequent erosion by the Oak Creek has created a spectacular canyon. It's also referred to as the Grand Canyon's younger sister due to its extreme beauty, which you'll see pictured here. So it's approximately 12 miles long, so you can still kind of see how vast it is, but the water flows year long, so amazing opportunities for swimming and also fishing. And then it continues through onto Sedona, meeting up with the Verde River southeast of Cottonwood. So that leads me nicely on to the Red Rocks of Sedona. So Sedona is a must visit for anyone traveling to Arizona. It's considered one of the most beautiful places on earth, and I think this picture really highlights that. Like a lot of Arizona, it's huge for outdoor activity. You know, you've got your hot air ballooning, mountain biking, hiking, pink Jeep tours. So yeah, and the Red Rock at sunset and sunlight really lights up. So it's absolutely spectacular. But Sedona's also kind of got a wellness and spiritual side to it that people aren't as familiar with. But it's host to these what's known as vortexes. They're kind of said to be like swirling centers of energy that help with healing, meditation, self-exploration. So if you do take like a guided Jeep tour or a guided hiking tour, then they'll often stop you on the way to point out these vortexes, which are kind of recognizable from where if a tree grows on it, they'll be swelled up. So yeah, it's really unique, really interesting, and definitely something to check out. And Sedona also has a really vibrant art community as well. So something for everyone there. And then after Sedona, you'll carry on the highway, and then you'll end up and spend the night in Cottonwood. So Cottonwood is the heart of Arizona's wine country. Pictured here, obviously, is a vineyard, and the Old Town Cottonwood tourist area is the epicenter of the renowned Verde Valley wine region. So there's some really amazing vineyards in this area, which often surprises people, but I can personally vouch, you can't get Arizona wine in the UK, so it's definitely worth the trip there, just solely for the wine. So moving on to leg 12. So this is the final leg of our road trip. So we're starting in, leaving the wineries of Cottonwood, and then we are heading down into Phoenix for the flight home. But if you take this 160-mile route, which takes 3 hours and 30 minutes, these are various stopping points on the way. So you have Jerome and Prescott. You can also see here Wickenburg, which is an option to add in as well. But yeah, absolutely scenic the whole way and great stopping off points. So the first stop would be on this byway is Jerome. So Jerome's a really interesting and unique town. It was once home to the wealthiest mine in the world, and it was just owned by one man. And then the whole town was declared a National Historic Landmark in 1967. So in the 1920s, it was huge for mining on copper, gold, and silver. And then the mine closed in 1953, and then it's become the largest ghost town in the West. So yeah, it's got a real historic feel. And in the 1960s, they kind of restored this, but with real historic accuracy. So when you go, you will kind of feel like you're back in the 1920s on one of these mines. And yeah, as I mentioned, and you can see a picture here, it's huge ghost kind of element for it. So you can do various tours on that. The Grand Hotel is a must visit. There's been supposed various sightings of kind of ghosts and paranormal activity. So yeah, if that's something your clients would be interested in, then definitely worth popping in on the byway. But it's also very scenic. So Jerome's set up on the top of the hill, and you can see kind of like the highways and byways that you've travelled, as well as Sedona's beautiful red rocks. So moving on for the very unique ghost town of Jerome, the next stop along our highway is Prescott. So you can hike through large ponderosa pines here or appreciate historic places. So it's kind of very diverse as a town in itself. But yeah, something to do to see for everyone. There's over 400 miles of hiking, mountain biking, equestrian trails, and pitched on the slide is Watson Lake, which I'm sure you will agree is absolutely beautiful. But Prescott also does have a very Western feel. We have Whiskey Row, which is kind of a row with loads of old saloons that are how they were back in the day, and you can walk in, have a drink, have lunch, and they'll kind of point out gunshot wounds on the ceilings from an actual like gunfight that happened back in the day. You can see where people would rock up on their horse to the bar and order a whiskey. So yeah, a really authentic Western feel, as well as the beautiful hiking trails, and also home to the oldest rodeo in the world. So be sure to make sure you look at dates if people would be interested in visiting that. And then, sadly, the final stop on our tour will be taking you to the capital city of Arizona, which is Phoenix. So in normal times, there's non-stop flights from London Heathrow into Phoenix daily. So yeah, it's a great gateway as well. It's also the 5th largest city in the US, but the kind of, as you can see pictured here, the gorgeous kind of desert scenery really sets it apart from most cosmopolitan cities. And it's actually, Phoenix has more land designated for parks and preserves than any other major city in the nation. So yeah, in addition to kind of its natural beauty and Old West roots, it's also got amazing shopping. We've got Macerich shopping malls, dining, museums, and more cultural attractions. And 2 must-dos in Phoenix is the Botanical Gardens and also the Musical Instrument Museum, which is really unique, and you could honestly spend a whole day there. But it's got a collection of over 8,000 instruments, and they're from all over the world, so you can kind of spend the day walking through. Really interactive museum as well. Greater Phoenix area, it's also got over 200 golf courses as well, so people do often travel to the area just for golf as well. So that concludes the road trip through the 3 amazing states. It's so great that we can come together, because I do feel like people will be looking for more multi-state options as well. So yeah, this is an amazing one of all our byways and highways. And then we've just put together some top tips for your clients as well. So just make time for the journey. I think you'll see from what we've discussed here, there's so many places you're going to want to stop off at on the way. So yeah, just make time for that journey to allow yourself to, stop and admire all the views of the way. Ensure clients top up their fuel when they can. Again, that's just one of our top tips. We say if you pass one, then it's just worth filling up, just to be sure. America the Beautiful Pass. We really recommend this because when you're visiting 3 or more parks, It's a very economical way of doing it, £80 per vehicle, and it's valid for a year. And of course, we pass quite a few national parks along the route, so definitely worth doing. Also, the National Park Visitor Centre is an amazing resource, maps, activities, everything like that, viewpoints. So do suggest clients pop into them, and of course, always carry plenty of water as well. So on this next slide here, we will be sending this with you to you all after, but essentially just a few extra resources we have here. We've got our online training programs, you know, itineraries, images, everything like that. So we'll be sharing this with you after. So yeah, anything else you want to dive into, it's all there. And then on the next slide, we've also got our contact information. So do please follow up with us with any questions. We'd also, if you do have any questions, please do pop them in the chat box now. And I think Bethan is going to read out some questions for us if you have any.
Thanks, Katie. Just one question I see that came in. It's when you were speaking, actually, Jenny. It was, can you give a guide to the temperature May through September for Utah?
Okie dokie. Utah's definitely a four-season destination. We're known as a big skiing destination in the winter, but year-round national parks towards the south are absolutely fantastic. But it is a very, very good question asking about the temperatures. We are in the desert Southwest, and I'm sure Katie will agree with me, certainly when you head down into Arizona as well, is that the summer months, so really June through to September, early October, can be very warm. You can get temperatures during the day around 30 degrees or so. So my recommendation for anyone who is traveling in those summer months and potentially with family in the school holidays is plan your day so that you do an early morning activity and then perhaps the drive to the next destination, and then have a late afternoon activity, so you miss the heat of the day. And that's really where our recommendation for water comes from, because you definitely need it. I think if you can travel shoulder season, so spring and autumn, they are my favorite times to travel, because the national parks are slightly less busy, accommodation is more available, and the temperatures are a little bit cooler. And as I think Bethan mentioned, at that time of year, it's definitely travel with layers, so that you can kind of like early morning and into the evenings are going to be quite cool, so you're going to need your layers, but during the day it's still going to be a good, you know, nice 20 to mid-20s in temperature. I hope that answers your question.
That was brilliant. Thank you, Jenny. And also in terms of water as well, in terms of the altitude, it's useful to have the water for that as well, because some people do experience some mild altitude sickness when they go up into the Rockies. So just stay hydrated from the moment you land. Any more questions? Here we go. Are there wholesalers in the UK who would do the National Park Pass for agents? Jenny or Katie? Do you know
That's a tough one. I don't know of anyone who does, but let us look into it for you.
Alan's just put Viator.
Yeah, very true. Viator.
That's a good.
Does do it. Certainly, some of the tour operators do have access to it, but often the easiest way for clients to purchase it is at the gate of the first national park that they do enter. Very, very easy to do. Make sure you have your ID, as it's allocated to the main purchaser.
Yeah. Are there any areas where driving is problematic? In Colorado, maybe not problematic, but you have to just maybe plan ahead, particularly in the shoulder season. You don't want to get caught out if you go in late autumn and the snow arrives early. So I think just be aware of, you can check on the, I can send some links for like the national park websites, and Twitter is also a great source of information for the road closures, but snow often affects them, particularly Independence Pass, which closes the moment the snow drops. And then, as I mentioned, on the $1 Million Highway, there are some areas that don't have the rails on the side, so it's not problematic per se. It just requires responsible driving, and yeah, it's fine. Generally, the driving conditions in Colorado are excellent. Even even the Trail Ridge Road, which goes through the Rocky Mountain National Park, is only 7% incline. So yeah, you go up very, very high, but the roads are long and winding. You're not sort of going up vertical roads. It'll be fine. If you're a happy, confident driver in the UK, you'll be fine in Colorado.
Yeah, I think that's the same for Arizona as well. It kind of obviously depends on when you're visiting. I mentioned Flagstaff can get some snow, but yeah, in general, really good road conditions, really, really easy driving. So there's nothing too adventurous there on the roads.
And just one thing to add into Utah over and above, in the winter months, that Scenic Byway 12 does climb to quite an elevation, and it does get a little bit of snow on it. The Zion Mount Carmel Scenic Highway, the one I mentioned right at the very, very, very beginning of our road trip, it does wind up and go through some pretty long tunnels that are carved into the rocks, which are dramatic in themselves, but it does have some height restrictions to it. So if you have clients that are hiring more than the standard holiday style RV, more of a bigger Winnebago style, they definitely need to be aware of their vehicle dimensions. And then also, certainly in the peak months, they run for the larger vehicles, they can only get one vehicle through in each direction at a time. So they have to have a traffic light system. So often they will put a restriction on the timings when the larger vehicles can go through, and that's often early in the morning or later in the evening. And then that can build up a little bit of a queue at the beginning of either end of those tunnels.
Thanks, Jenny. There's one more question regarding train service between Williams and Grand Canyon. Is there one?
Yep, I've seen that. So yeah, there is a train service which goes from departs daily from Williams to the Grand Canyon. It takes about an hour, but yeah, it's a really historic trip on the Grand Canyon. So yeah, you will go from Williams to the Grand Canyon South Rim.
Perfect. Thank you, Katie. I think that might be all the questions that have come in. I just responded to someone who said, can we send maps? I can certainly send. I have a lot of maps. I'm very happy to send them to anyone who needs them. Just please drop me an email, and also visitor guides, etc., etc. And I'm sure it's the same for Jenny and Katie. So we actually have a few goodie bags to give away, unless there's any more questions. I don't think there are. We have a few goodie bags to give away, combined Colorado, Utah, Arizona goodie bags, and we each have a question, and we'd love you to pop the answer into the chat box, and whoever puts the answer in first, we'll send you that goodie bag. I think that's how we thought would be the best way to do it. So I'll kick off with Colorado, if that's all right, ladies. And my question is, how many days of sunshine does Colorado enjoy on average every year? Wow, loads of answers.
Oh wow. That was a lot of quick answers there.
I've just scrolled to the top. Ian. Well done, Ian. Ian can. I'll send you the Colorado and Arizona, Utah goodie bag.
Amazing.
Well done. Cool, it's a lot of 300.
Okay, I can kick off with the next question for Arizona. So we mentioned Cottonwood on this Scenic Byways and Highways itinerary. What was Cottonwood most famous for? Oh gosh, everyone's been paying attention. I love it. Let me just scroll to the top. Yep, so I think Helen, you're the winner for that one. So we will get you a goodie bag sent out as well. Well done.
Okay, and finally, the Utah question to win this goodie bag. So our third question, our third winner is, during the first part of our road trip, I mentioned the All America Scenic Byway. which cuts through a lot of Utah between Bryce Canyon and Capitol Reef National Parks. What was the number? Some people even got there before I even asked the question. Okay, hold on. And our winner is Mark Horton. Well done, Mark.
Woo, well done.
Um,
Brill.
Perfect. Well, thank you all so much for joining. Hope you enjoyed this lovely little virtual road trip on such a gloomy day. But yeah, you will follow up and send this presentation. You've got all our information there, so do feel free to reach out whenever you need any assistance. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good
Thanks,
day.
everyone. Goodbye.
Have a lovely
Have a great
day.
day.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us.